Identity is extending the identification service in various ways. For example, through the introduction of biometric forms of identification. Biometrics will be introduced in a privacy-friendly, reusable way. The approach is for a trusted party to take a photograph of a person and send it to Identity with the name of the person. The person accesses the photograph online and asserts it is their photograph, and they ask two other previously verified people to agree that the photograph is of them. The identity of the person is also verified against three other organisations by demonstrating that the other organisations have a record about them. Once the photograph is identified, then a person can use it with any other organisation who requires a photo ID for the person. Such organisations could be the Passport Office, driver's licence requirements, club cards, and so forth. Photo ID can be attached to any verified identity. It does not have to be printed on a card, but can be shown on a mobile phone, or on a telescreen, or on a checkout screen. We see it as a very useful identification device for door-to-door people, such as census checkers, where, for example, a person could dial a number and get a photograph of the person delivered to their mobile phone. The identity approach to identification fits well with the concept of federated identification. Federated identification is where one organisation agrees to accept identification established with another organisation. Some people call this single sign-on, but it is broader than single sign-on. Federation can be made to work very easily if a group of federated organisations agrees to use an identity provider to include the end user as part of the federation. The following set of screens shows how Identity itself can use the association with a bank to simplify and reduce the costs of collecting money from its customers. The organisations independently identify the person and agree to allow the person to divert and perform actions on the other organisation's website. The end user already has an account with a federated bank. They're first going to identify themselves to Identity because they wish to be a customer of Identity. One of the sources that Identity uses for identification is the bank, because Identity, the company, is federated with the bank for the purposes of payment. So the bank is one of the items that can be selected. The person puts in their bank account number. The given name and surname and date of birth would have been filled out automatically. Comes back and says that the bank has been used for identification purposes. At some later stage, while at the Identity website, they wish to make a payment. The default will be to transfer money from the bank account used previously for verification. Other payment options will be available. The payment is authorized by the user entering a two-factor verification method that is done by the bank or authorized by the bank. This is typically getting a code by SMS, then entering the code into the screen. We will be creating a super ID, which will identify people for superannuation purposes. Any superannuation website will be able to allow the user to perform actions on another website. This is particularly important for transfers of superannuation benefits. It will be useful for finding lost superannuation. Organisations using Super ID will reduce cases of lost super because a person's lost super can be checked whenever they make a deposit to a super fund. The Passport Office could use the photo ID, and it could also agree to allow people to verify their photo ID with their passport photo. More importantly, it could allow banks to use passport photo IDs in return for the banks allowing access, if the person consents, to bank histories. The approach allows organisations to federate their identifications. We are a member of the Universities and Research Organisations Australian Access Federation, and we look forward to offering federated services to the AAF. Individuals have certain rights to information that is held about them, and organisations holding information on a person are legally obliged to answer yes or no for no cost to the question, "Do you hold any information on me?" They are further required to give the individual that information if they request it, though a reasonable charge can be levied for supplying the information. Many government departments do not welcome such requests because they believe something might go wrong. For example, they believe if they supply direct electronic access to an individual's data, they may have to meet service level obligations. The tax office believes that a person accessing their own tax information via a service like Identity might somehow compromise the integrity of the tax file numbers. These difficulties can be easily addressed, but the common reaction of most organisations is that if there is a chance of something going wrong, then they should not do it. This ignores the positive benefits that the organisation can obtain from allowing electronic access. To give an example, we find that 25% of all addresses in the electoral office are incorrect. Most commonly, the person has moved and not bothered to change their address. It is critical for the working of representative democracy that the enrolment address be correct when the election is held. Green ID could inform the electoral office, with the person's consent, that their address had changed and put in place a process for the electoral roll to be corrected. Another example relates to Medicare. At the moment, we access the Medicare public website to see if the Medicare card claimed by the person exists. If this is the first time a person has accessed the website, a letter is sent to the individual with a password so that the person can get detailed access to the Medicare records. This is done by Medicare itself. If the person does not want a password to be sent, then we could tell that to Medicare, or Green ID could arrange for a password to be sent to the person by email. This would increase the take-up of the Medicare Access service and would help keep the Medicare records up to date. As a side benefit, it is our belief that the approach could remove the need for Medicare to issue new health ID cards and instead use an electronic ID controlled by Medicare and the individual themselves. Rather than less identification, we see more. We see data continuing to be kept in tight silos, but we also see an evolving process of the individual gaining electronic access to their own information. We see Identity providing tools to the individuals to help them access their own information and control its release to other parties. We see many other organisations like Identity providing competition in this identification space. We see identification becoming standardised, and we see a wholesale introduction of federated identity organisations using identity providers to give individuals access to their information. Thank you.